Well, hello, friends, and welcome to another live Thursday episode of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. We got Chris Carlson here from syracuse.com as well. Chris, it's winter here. Like, we have 4 more feet of snow than we did at this time last year. And we're preparing for yet another snowstorm where we're going to get upwards of a foot of snow and then maybe more over the weekend. Like, have you gotten used to winter being back in central New York? We have much more that we have a winter at which we have not had, believe it or not, the past few years up to those central New York standards. So I hope you're surviving so far and what we were used to for a while, but got away from for some reason.
You know, the last couple of years did make me feel crazy where I was like, back in my day, kids, like, because when I was at Syracuse, I remember it snowing every day. And like, then the last couple of years was like, did I imagine that was what winter was like? Did I just make that up? But no, I get it. This is real winter. We were lucky.
That's it. I saw some social media complaints about this. Like, oh, I can't take this anymore. I'm like, hey, Becky, you don't understand, kiddies. This used to be what it used to be all the time. Now, I don't just bring that up for mindless banter to start the show. What used to get us through these winters, right, and maybe make us not notice it as much was when the Syracuse basketball team was on a run, was successful this time of the year. You know, you're really gearing up for the NCAA tournament. What kind of seed are they going to have? Where should I buy my tickets to the NCAA regional site? Is Syracuse going to make it there? The conversation is certainly much different at this time of the year, and I want to get to that coming up a little bit later on in the show. I asked our Syracuse Sports Insiders, basically, have you guys checked out on the year? Now, I think fans in their own ways, Chris, especially now with social media and so many other ways to follow the program, will do follow it in some way, shape, or form. But are they as invested as they used to be? Watching games start to finish, watching the road games, just living and dying by this thing like they used to. So I think they had some pretty interesting responses to that. We'll get to that coming up. The Syracuse lacrosse team has its first big test. Speaking of weather, they're going to go down to College Park, Maryland. Weather's not looking good for that match up there after Syracuse has been shot out of a cannon here in the first 3 games of the year in the comfy confines of the JMA Wireless Dome. But for those of you that are still around on the day-to-day action of Syracuse basketball, Chris,
we appreciate you.
We appreciate number one, we appreciate you. Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching this, because Chris and I, we're on that wall. We're there every day for you, baby. This Saturday, now, North Carolina is certainly not up to North Carolina standards, which I think makes this an interesting contrast because both coaches are on their own unique hot seats, right? Syracuse fans are certainly starting to grumble about what they're seeing from Adrian Autry, losing record. Are they even going to make the ACC tournament? They just lost to the last place team in the ACC. North Carolina fans are none too pleased as well, Chris. And Hubert Davis was the coach of the year in the ACC last year, went to the Sweet 16, was in the national championship game with North Carolina just a few years ago. But
Adrian Autry was on all those first coach lists, like best first year coach lists. So I don't think it's that different.
He was 20-12 in his first year. I mean, you want to not count that Chaminade win. That's 19-12 if you want to look at it realistically. But they're both fascinating in that they both took over for Hall of Famers, were groomed for the job, assistants, handpicked by Roy Williams, handpicked by Jim Boeheim, and now both fan bases are grumbling here. So I just love that storyline coming into this game about how both of these coaches kind of need this win to kind of at least turn down the temperature of their seat, at least temporarily here. Carolina still has a chance to make the tournament. Syracuse has no chance to make the tournament short of getting in the ACC tournament and winning 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, Hubert Davis, this is his 4th year. Adrian Autry, this is his 2nd. And Hubert Davis has had sort of success followed by failure, followed by success, followed by failure, at least by UNC standards. Adrian Autry hasn't made the NCAA tournament. So despite the fact that he was up for those awards last year, you could view last year as a failure by Syracuse standards. But I think the thing that's really interesting to me is that both coaches, they watched their mentors win and coach one way for so many years. both took over very early in this NIL transfer portal era, and both did a really bad job in the transfer portal this year. I mean, complain about Syracuse all you want, and like it's bad, but like North Carolina did worse with a better brand. I mean, they knew that they had to replace Armando Bacot. They knew, I think, that they had to replace Harrison Ingram and that they were going to lose Cormac Ryan. Mm-hmm. And the guys they got are Van Allen Lubin from Vanderbilt. They got a player who played minimally at Georgia Tech, and they got Cody Tyson, like the best shooter at Belmont. Like, that's who the Tar Heels got. I mean, at least Syracuse got Eddie Lampkin, right? I mean,
they got a productive player.
Job. Yeah, they got one guy.
And Chris, it's fascinating because these are two of the lead brands in the ACC. Obviously, Syracuse has had a longer streak of not being up to their orange standard, if you will. They haven't been ranked since 2018. This will be their fourth straight year, in all likelihood, out of the NCAA tournament. And I think what rubs more salt in the wound on the Carolina side of things, they were the preseason number one team 2 years ago, didn't even make the tournament, just free fall out of the rankings and didn't make the tournament. And then this year, top 10 team as well. And again, this is all according to preseason expectation when nobody knows anything, right? But
they have guys like we know.
They have guys
is
exactly.
Is a good player. We know
they
RG
have talent, and they had the right to say, "Hey, wait a minute, we're North Carolina. We are ranked in the top 10. That's where we should be." Like they have the right to, kind of shake their fist and be angry is a strong term. Be sports angry about the fact that they're not living up to their standards. Syracuse fans are looking to get back to where they were 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So what I'm interested in is how much does, and Davis maybe a little bit because he was not a head coach at any level before he took over at North Carolina. Adrian Autry, assistant into head coach. The parallels are really interesting here to take over. But how much do you lay, I don't want to say blame, but how much is there some accountability that Autry was an assistant coach that helped build this program to the point where it is now, although every head coach will tell you need time as a head coach to establish yourself. Big difference between assistant coach and head coach. And the same thing with Hubert Davis, right? Like, I think in the portal era and in this time and age that we're in college basketball, the honeymoon you get to establish yourself, especially as a literal blue blood program, maybe gets cut in half because you did help build it to the point that we're at here? Or do you just cut it off at when they became head coaches?
That is the question, right? Like, it's understandable that both of these men watched it get built one way, and then when they take over, they try to build it the same way or follow some of the same, philosophies. But like, it doesn't work in the NIL era, right? So do you give them time to course correct? Or do you just say, hey, like, we could go out and get a guy that understands the landscape, and like, why are we giving you time to course correct? That is the question. And like, I don't know that there's a right answer, right? I know people are sticking their foot in the ground one way or the other on the Adrian Autry conversation, but like, do you give a guy time to course correct or not, and see? If you are looking to defend Adrian Autry and the coaching staff, right? We heard Jim Boeheim, we heard Alan Griffin say, if the NIL money was there, they would have done better. Mm-hmm. And there is one guy you can look at and say that's probably true, right? They wanted Dakota LaFew as their second starting guard and not Jaquan Carlos. Dakota LaFew is having a good year at Georgia. Now, he doesn't change things around completely and make you a powerhouse again, but he is probably the best player on this Syracuse team. And so then you were replacing Jaquan Carlos, who, played so poorly at point guard that he got taken out of the role, with a guy who is maybe your best player. And that does certainly change things substantially, I think, in terms of results. So
someone they just got outbid for, Chris. Like
Georgia
just offered more money, and boom, that's how they got Dakota LaFew, flat out. So now you have Griffin this week, Coach Alan Griffin, during one of his weekly radio hits, saying that he thinks they're going to have the resources. And it's funny, he said what I've been saying for the past few weeks, that Syracuse basketball has got to find their Kyle McCord. And he is confident that they're going to have the resources to do that. Now, we've talked about the House settlement and that money coming in and how you disperse that $20.5 million, which, according to Jim Boeheim during another radio interview, saying that they're going to have the money and they're going to spend that money. Whereas before, anybody on the record at Syracuse from Kent Severud on down was saying they were going to be, air quotes, competitive in that field. So mix all that in and who Syracuse can go after and what they're going to do. I don't have the list in front of me. We're not going to litigate this week, but who is the Kyle McCord in the portal? And if you got outbid, that's what made me think of it, Chris, for Dakota LeFew last year. How does 1 year change the fact that you're not going to get outbid for whoever that Kyle McCord is, that top flight player that Syracuse is going to have to target? We know they're going to need a point guard. We know they're going to need a center, and wouldn't hurt to get another player just to have some insurance based on a surprise or two that might go in the portal, might not be back, or to back up Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White and the players that are coming in next year. So all this on the backdrop, Chris, Syracuse beat North Carolina last year at the Dome. It was one of the highlights of the season, and that was a good North Carolina year. This team been struggling a little bit. They've lost 5 of 7. They were down, I think, how much were they down big at Duke? They were down big at Duke. I think 25. They lost to Clemson by 20 in this recent string, and the fan base in the here and now is just not happy with the product they're seeing on the court. There's reported chemistry issues there, and they're expecting people to flee the scene at North Carolina after the year. Syracuse, I don't think there's necessarily chemistry issues. Adrian Autry certainly wasn't happy with some of the effort he saw from his team defensively at Miami. He says they're not a good team. They're not a good constructed roster, and they're limited in what they can do. Yeah,
no, I think that I would much rather have North Carolina's roster. In terms of talented players, that's the group that I would prefer to have.
And it's interesting how both coaches kind of said similar things after recent games. And when they say those things, it's easy for us to be like, well, aren't you the coach? Aren't you in control of effort? Aren't you in control of certain things? Like, the coach can't do everything. At some point, it's on the players to execute the plan. It's on the players to do things that coaches are surely telling them to do. But when you're the coach and the program is struggling and it's not up to the standards that were there before, whatever program we're talking about here, Carolina's standards are higher than Syracuse. Well, you're the guy that bears the brunt of it at this point, and you're going to get pointed at this point, especially when the players come and go at such a quick rate. So Syracuse fans, if you think Autry's on the hot seat, I'm not going to talk you out of that. I just find it interesting how Carolina fans have this standard. Let's put it this way, Chris. If Adrian Autry had gone to a national championship game within the last 4 years and a Sweet 16 within the last 4 years, he'd probably have a 10-year contract extension. Whereas at North Carolina, it's like, hey, buddy, you missed the tournament for the second time in 3 years. We could be looking elsewhere.
Well, we talk all the time about how Jim Boeheim sort of masked the deterioration of the program with those NCAA tournament runs, and yeah, we'd be very happy with those results, I think. And maybe that's lowering the bar lower than it should have been for Syracuse basketball. But most programs take those results over a 4-year span.
I asked our Syracuse Sports Insiders this week, and man, I was fascinated to sit here and sift through these texts. Our insiders came through in a big way, and we'd love for you to be a Syracuse Sports Insider, by the way. And that means you get to text me directly anytime. Your thoughts, questions, opinions, analysis, just want to shoot the breeze and talk SU sports, we can do it anytime. And it's right there on your screen. Join subtext.com/Syracuse Sports. That's the easiest way to sign up. It's just $3.99 a month, but you can try it free for 2 weeks. And we would love for you to join our growing community of Syracuse Sports Insiders. And Chris, as you know, our insiders, okay, these are not fair weather fans. These are people that are dug in. These are people that are dedicated. These are people that have been fans for, depending on what age they are. We have a variance of ranges in our insiders, which is great to see. But these are the fans that are into it. And to take their temperature, be like, how are you guys handling this? Like, I flat out asked them, have you checked out on the season? It was enlightening and a bit humbling for Syracuse, I'll say, to read their responses. And I just want to highlight a few of them here. I got close to 100 responses on this.
Wow.
Which is incredible. And our fans were really fired up to give me their feedback on this.
They haven't checked out on you, Brent.
No, and thank you for that. We appreciate that. And you know what, Chris? Honestly, I appreciate those that are saying, hey, you know how we keep up with this team? Through you guys, through your stories and the Syracuse Sports Insider text line. So shout out to those of you that are doing that. But I just wanted to highlight a few comments just to give you a little bit of a sense of the feedback that I got back. JR says, I used to make it a priority to watch every single game, scheduled life events around this. Now I'm only watching if I happen to be home and nothing better is on. Jack W. says, I have emotionally checked out on this season. I don't care whether they win any of their final 6 games. They can probably lose them all and still make the ACC tournament. He adds this, the next time I'll actually be interested in Syracuse basketball is when the transfer portal opens. And I think Jack's comment speaks to a lot of people, Chris. I see your head shaking there. Chris H. says, as a 13-year season ticket holder, I'm still going to home games, although I've had to work harder to avoid going alone this year. Honestly, I've checked out of the away games at this point. He says he's not hoping for any coaching changes going into next year, but Red is definitely on the hottest of seats. A couple more here from Sean M., who says, I'll continue to go to games and stay to the end, but I have no expectations. It's a weird feeling to be up there watching a game, knowing the result doesn't really matter at this point. And I loved these comments. One from Gene, who says, I got free tickets for the game Saturday against North Carolina. Great seats, and I'm not even excited to go. If you told me this a few years ago, I'd say you were nuts. And John P. says, well, Brent, let me put it to you this way. My employer has a box and free beer and food, which can go a long way towards a bad game, but I find this team so unwatchable that I have not asked for any tickets. That's it right there, Chris. That's just a sense of it, and I wasn't picking and choosing the ones that reinforced my point. We did get a few people that were like Sean that says, I'm going to the games and I'm staying, but the investment level just isn't there, especially when, like, what are they playing for at this point? The ACC tournament, and then what, right? You're going to go out there and win 5 games in Charlotte. If you do, hey, I'll be the first to congratulate you because it'll be one of the stories of the year, but it's a weird feeling for Syracuse fans to have nothing to watch at this time of the year other than just watching games.
I was having this conversation earlier today with somebody who told me they turned the Miami game off at halftime. And I was like, wow, like, I'm impressed you made it to halftime.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't getting paid, like, I don't think I'd be watching it. And one of the textures, I do think it's interesting. And, like, I'm not going to be a transfer portal basher, like, but with college free agency every year, right, that it does take away something from late in the year when you don't have a good team, because it's harder to watch the team and look for growth. Because, like,
yes,
if you see any growth, the player might be gone, the next year or in 2 years. So there's less of that sort of investment, I think, in the current era of college sports. And it would be nice to see multi-year contracts so that, we can take that off the books a little bit.
Which used to be recruiting, right? When a team clearly had gone off the map, okay, well, who are you bringing in recruiting? Which is still a conversation in both sports. Recruiting still matters. And Syracuse did go to the traditional route, if you will, and got some pretty high-profile recruits that are coming in. Leaning on freshmen now, when you can go grab veteran players in the portal and make that instant impact, you're maybe taking a little bit more of a risk. But if you find the right freshman, it can help carry you through. But I don't know. How do you feel about that, Chris? Because the portal is interesting. I want the portal to be available to these players, given how much coaches have just come and gone at will in recent years. Certainly NIL is a point of contention for a lot of people that are turning off games earlier and just not into college sports as much as they used to be. But to see the full blurring of the lines between college and the NFL, right? Those are things NFL fans talk about at the end of the year when they know they're out of the playoffs. Okay, we need a quarterback. We need a running back. We need this. We got to do this in the draft. We got to sign this guy in free agency. I'm a Red Sox fan. They signed Alex Bregman last night. I'm like, there we go. That's the guy they needed, right? For that transaction conversation to be here at the college level. And all this is doing, Chris, is punting to next year and putting such an immense pressure bubble on Syracuse to deliver. And people are looking at it this way. You got to deliver in the portal. Doesn't matter that you did well in recruiting. You got to wow us in the portal. You got to bring in 2, 3 maybe impact players. and then I'll get back on board here. Go get your McCord, then I'm back on board here. It's like fans have been trained in a short period of time, like, this is the way it is now. And if you get somebody out of the portal, it gets my juices flowing, then I'll come back. I don't know if that's a good thing.
I think it's fine. The only, like, I just want a little bit more continuity of team year to year. So I would like some multi-year contracts where you have some level of confidence that the guy is staying. I think the transactions are fun. I think being able to go into the portal and grab a piece or two that you need is fun. Now on Syracuse's side, like, they're gonna have to do better than the portal than they've ever done before. Cause like the pieces they brought in, like JJ Starling's been good and Eddie Lampkin's been good. But like, they probably need a game changer.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on Alex Klein.
Yep.
Their new general manager in this team. And there's just so much that you got to get it right. And there's so much that has to fall into place with everybody else doing the same thing, by the way, right? So what is Syracuse going to do in this landscape when the playing field's going to even out a little bit with the house settlement? And you can, by the way, you can still go to those boosters and get extra money that way. It's not like that goes away. It's just becomes a little more centralized with the schools being able to pay their players directly. Yeah.
And they're trying to control some of that, yet to be determined how well they do it. But you've seen that, the NCAA put some guidance out yesterday that any payment over $600 has to be reported to the NCAA, and they're going to try to enforce, true NIL, true
good luck
value
with
of
that.
deals. Right. That is right.
Who trusts the NCAA to do that?
Right.
Who thinks they can? Like,
it's
you
not
really
be
have.
NCAA, but it's hard to imagine anyone doing it right.
You really have to screw up these days to catch the attention of those that are enforcing the rules, and how many schools are just pushing back on those rules and those enforcements. And sounds a lot like real life right now, which I won't get into, but I don't know. I just think we're so far down the road here. Like, what's that going to do? I'm very skeptical of that.
Yep.
I'm very skeptical of that.
We started out and we had a very negative show. We get accused of being negative sometimes, and today that's probably
never.
Today that's probably true. I'm going to allow you to send us off on a positive note here. I am very much a Memorial Day lacrosse fan. Like, I'll watch the ACC tournament. I'll watch the Final Four. If Syracuse wins a national championship, that's cool. But like, I tune in, way too late for any of the storylines to really kick in and for me to know much. I know Notre Dame Syracuse is going to be an epic battle this year, but like, catch me up on lacrosse. Like, what do I need to know? What's percolating out there? I know they're good.
Chris, I'm going to make you a Valentine's Day lacrosse fan. Okay, you don't have to wait till Memorial Day. I'm going to bring it, maybe even St. Patrick's Day, if you need some time to catch up and get on board here. So there's a few things about this team. One, this is as deep a team as I've seen in a long time at every position. They have depth at attack. They have depth at midfield. They have an experienced and deep defense. They've got a great goaltender, and they have solved their face-off issue. So everywhere you look on the field, they have either talent or experience. This team is fun. This is the team that has got back to the philosophy of Syracuse lacrosse more than any I've seen in recent years. They are encouraged to go behind the back, to go between the legs, to find that highlight goal, to have fun. Chris, there has been a SportsCenter top 10 worthy goal or two in every game this year. And Finn Thompson's been one of the big guys there, Joey Spallina certainly, but every time you watch the highlights, they're putting in goals that are unbelievable. Luke Roa had a shot from about 12 yards away and had about this much room to put it in the corner of the net and nailed it. Finn Thompson between the legs, Finn Thompson behind the back, Owen Hiltz going behind the back. And a lot of these players come out of box leagues, Canadian box leagues, where everything is tighter and they've got to be really creative with their stick around the net. So they're fun. And they make no bones about it that they're out there playing Harlem Globetrotters lacrosse, which was encouraged for such a long time by Roy Simmons Jr. into the Desco era. And for whatever reason, we just didn't see as much of in recent years. And Gary Gate, the guy who invented one of the greatest shots in the history of the sport, the air gate, encourages that, right? And they're good. They're one of the best teams in the country. Now, they've got a huge challenge Saturday. Maryland's beat them 6 times in a row. Last year, the Syracuse-Maryland game at the Dome, I don't know if you remember that. That thing was epic. Went to overtime. Michael Leo thought he scored their winning goal in overtime, but there's a real screwy rule in lacrosse about in the crease and the goal mouth, and it's a whole thing that I won't get into now. So they wipe off the goal. Syracuse is stunned. Maryland goes down the other way, scores in overtime to win. So Syracuse is thinking about that. Plus, the weather's not looking too good in College Park on Saturday. Wind, rain, high 30s. Syracuse has been playing in the comforts of the JMA Dome the first 3 games of the year. Let's see how they do when they got to go outside in the conditions against a team, Chris. Maryland's won 2 national championships in the last 7 years. They're one of the high-level programs in the sport, and Syracuse has to that's one hump they got to get over here. You mentioned Notre Dame and some of these other great programs that they're going to play down the road here. But if you can go on the road in crappy weather and knock off Maryland, it's just going to be another reassurance of how good I think this team is. They are national championship worthy. As a Memorial Day fan, Chris, I would put some time aside in Memorial Day to watch Syracuse lacrosse again, but don't wait till then. Get on board early, man. So it used to be basketball that carried us through. I think the lacrosse team has taken that baton and saying, we got it this time. We got it.
You'll forgive me for this, I'm sure. I think I'm going to be basketball focused this weekend, but it looks like April 5th is that Notre Dame Syracuse game in the Dome. So I will become a lacrosse fan before Memorial Day. I will become a lacrosse fan on April 5th.
I've been encouraged, by the way. A lot of those people that were texting me yesterday when I asked them have they checked out on basketball are like, I'll tell you what, I'm getting into lacrosse, right? And I like to hear that. I heard, I don't know if I have the text here, but my guy Rock and Ron texted me today.
Rock and Ron's gotten into lacrosse?
Rock, here it is. So give me a second here so I can put it on the screen. Right. When Rock and Ron, who was over my shoulder here, if you're watching the pod on YouTube here. So Rock and Ron sent me this. I've jumped on board with lacrosse this year. They look awesome. I would agree with some who feel it would be boom or bust. Says he hasn't been up on lacrosse, and I got cut off a little bit here. Said he hasn't been cut off on lacrosse since the Carthage Powell brothers, Casey, Ryan, and Mike.
Me too.
Were out
Me and
there.
Rock and Ron are in the same place.
See, welcome back. We're getting you guys back, right? So it's not the Carthage connection. It's not the Gate brothers, but it's Spallina and Thompson and Hiltz and Roa and Michael Leo. And I'm going to leave some guys out of this conversation, even on the defensive end, Billy Dwan and a bunch of guys that this is a good team. And it's a combination of talent, experience, speed, and swagger. This team's got swagger, and they have the right to have a little swagger because they're that darn good. Now, they might lose a couple down the road here. Maryland's tough. You mentioned that Notre Dame matchup. Notre Dame's still number 1 in the country for a reason. Cornell is just as good as either one of those 2 teams I mentioned. They have the best attack in the country, C.J. Kirst and company. That game's in Long Island this year, by the way, Syracuse and Cornell, so a neutral site matchup that's going to be very interesting to watch. Duke's always good. Carolina's always good. Like, Syracuse lacrosse has a Notre Dame football-like schedule. Like, it does not lighten up after these first few games that they put in the bank here. So they're going to have some challenges along the way, but they're about as ready for it as I've seen since the last time they went to and won the national championship in 2009.
All right. That was more than...
did I sell you? You back in?
That
you
was
in?
more than I was ready for. Yeah,
all right. There we go. I hope I'm right about that. But if everything I've seen so far, this team checks all the boxes, man. They are fun. At the very least, Chris, put the expectations aside. They're just fun. If you go to a Syracuse lacrosse game and you are not entertained, okay, I'll steal the meme. Are you not entertained? I don't know what to tell you. If you walk away from that game and you're not entertained by the speed and the pace at which this team plays and the amount of goals they score and just the entertainment value, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that sounds like a much better place than where we started this whole show.
There we go. See, we're taking it down the home stretch on a positive note. I appreciate you bringing that to the table, my friend. That's going to do it for this live edition of Syracuse Sports, though. For Chris Carlson, I'm Brent Axe. Thanks for watching. Again, we'd love for you to be a part of our Syracuse Sports Insider community. The information right there on your screen, just at joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports. Try free for a couple weeks, and then it's just $3.99 a month after that. I'll be back with you Saturday night after Syracuse takes on North Carolina for Syracuse basketball postgame live on many of these channels you're watching now, so come on back for that. Please subscribe or follow on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, to Syracuse Sports, so you always get the new episodes when they're available to you right away. We'll talk to you next time, guys. Thanks for hanging with us today. Have a great weekend. Stay warm out there.